where he has that right to do so and not be in fear of being baselessly prosecuted. The reason
it's been a while since I've seen Kash Patel.
I would opine legally is that I wouldn't put Donald Trump on the witness stand because they'll ask him one question about something he did in his past, and they'll say, "You lied. We're prosecuting you for that." You lied. We're prosecuting you for that.
You know what they're going to do, and this is why Trump shouldn't testify, and why he good he didn't. They're going to say something like the prosecution's going to have him on the stand and say, "Mr. Trump, when you illegally paid Michael Cohen to cover up your crime, did you do it on Monday or Tuesday?"
Right.
And he's going to go, "I didn't." The judge is going to say, "Answer the question, Mr. Trump, Monday or Tuesday?" And Trump's going to say, "But I didn't
Restrict
do this.
yourself.
It's Monday or Tuesday, answer the question."
Restrict yourself to our
And you
trap.
bring up another point. Not only would the district attorney's office charge him with every felony for lying under oath, that judge specifically has contempt of court powers.
Yeah.
So the judge, you saw what he did to Costello, the world did, right? I mean, he literally did something nobody, including Alan Dershowitz, has ever seen. What do you think he's going to do to Trump?
I mean, he's already threatened him with jail time, right?
He's going to literally be like, "I'm holding you in contempt, $1 million. I'm holding you in contempt. You're going to jail for a week."
And I want to just show this story briefly, just to make sure everybody.
I was like 7 feet away from that.
And anybody who might not understand, I mean, this is Politico. Are you staring me down right now? Key Trump defense witness draws judge's wrath. This is unprecedented in absurdity and insanity that we're seeing in this court case, and it's worrying to me that it's mainly an issue for politicos, people who are paying attention to politics, who are watching the news, but for your everyday average American,
historic interview today.
They don't know what this stuff is. And so you see people on the street get asked the question, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I don't know, maybe Trump did it." And it's like, if you were actually watching this on a day-to-day, it's like they were reporting in numerous publications the TV drama moment.
Let me know in the comments
was
if there are issues with the audio.
phone call. I was a phone call talking to them about paying off Stormy Daniels, and then the prosecution, or the defense says, "You were actually talking about a prank phone call, were you not? That was a lie, and then here's the proof." And then they reported a pin drop moment like it was a TV movie. That's how insane this court case is.
Well, that's why I thought it was good that Trump didn't take the stand, right? They've already been on trial for 5 weeks. The jury is reportedly exhausted. There's no reason to put him in a position where they can just ask him about all kinds of things, try and trap him into other crimes. But also, like, this is dumb. We all know it. Let's just get this over with. I think that was one of the best moves that the defense made, because the prosecution would have dragged out Cross for another 6 weeks. We've been hearing about this forever.
And that's what they wanted, because the judge in this case and the prosecutors know that they'll never publicly admit, if they jail Donald Trump, he's going to win overnight. Mm-hmm. If Donald Trump is found,
the guy's already winning, so there might not be a real advantage to it.
They are going to have to allow Donald Trump to stay out on bond while he appeals this bogus trial. Otherwise, this country is going to go nuts.
Well, Trump got the hate endorsement.
Country will go nuts.
From Cenk Uygur. It's not really an endorsement, but Cenk said Trump is going to win. Buckle up. And the reason I say it's the hate endorsement is that if I tweeted Trump is going to win, buckle up, I support Trump. I'm voting for him. So it's seen as Trump's going to win, baby, buckle up. Cenk Uygur says it, and he's giving a warning to the progressives. But I call it the hate endorsement because he's basically saying to the left, with how, I mean, what did Biden just say the other day? Lacka. He's got a new. I don't know. He's got a new one. He's got a new word.
Yeah. Between him and Kamal, they have their own language.
He's an innovator. He's a creator.
That's right.
He's creating
slang terms,
new jobs for Webster Dictionary.
You know what you got to do? Get him a T-shirt that says what he should say on the T-shirt that he can wear.
That might help.
But you have to print it so he can read it up from the bottom.
Go bottom up. Just be like. But, you know, on your thing, you heard what James Comey did, what this hate guy did. Same thing, right? James Comey went on some clown show 2 days ago and basically said it doesn't matter who you are, what kind of human being you have to vote Biden. And he goes, and James Comey, the director of the FBI, who architected Russiagate and signed the bogus search warrants, he's the one telling the world right now you have to vote Biden because he's in fear that Trump is going to weaponize government. I mean, how rich is that?
It's ridiculous.
Well, he's in fear that Trump will actually bring accountability in government. My attitude with this is truly does Trump want revenge? If I was Trump, I'd want revenge. Unfortunately for these deep state cronies, these people who have lied over and over again to the American people, revenge and accountability overlap tremendously, and so I'll take it. Mm-hmm. And this is why I want to see arrests. I want to see firings. I think
something needs to happen.
Anybody who is party to the general corruption, to the Russiagate stuff, these intelligence agencies, they should be asked to resign at the lowest level, fired at the higher level, criminally prosecuted at the corrupt level. What I mean to say is those who were corrupt should be in jail. Those that knew what was going on and helped facilitate, but wasn't really party to the worst ongoings, terminated immediately. And those who are just underneath them and maybe filing the paperwork, I'm going to ask for your resignation peacefully. You need to get out of here.
Yeah, look, can I add a couple of things to that? I've recommended to President Trump, and whether he'll do it or not is up to him, obviously. But immediately, you revoke forever everyone's security clearance. That everyone's security clearance that ever participated in an illegal act that was not prosecuted. Everybody that signed the 51 Intel letter, I'm talking 3 secretaries of defense and CIA and NSA, deputies and everybody. Because what the world doesn't understand is those swamp monkeys rely on that security clearance to go out and get their $10 million payday in the defense industrial complex. And do you know who is the sole arbiter of security clearances? The President of the United States.
But this is why...
And you pull it.
Forever, though.
So
they can't make their way back. I mean, that's the big issue.
This is one of the reasons why they're saying vote Biden. But I think more importantly is they probably go home every night and start sweating, lying awake late at night thinking, if Trump wins, I go to jail.
Maybe. If Trump wins, maybe I go to jail. But if Trump wins, I lose my bankroll.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're fearing the most. All these people come in and out. It's not a Republican or Democratic thing. The Rod Rosensteins of the world, the Gina Haspels of the world. All these people are making money off of breaking the law and using it to weaponize it against Donald Trump. And their fear is that since they've become famous, James Comey, on a certain side of the country with certain political beliefs, their fear is their cash ATM is going to be turned off. And then they'll get prosecuted.
Now, what about the next tier beyond his criminal prosecutions is Schedule F and terminations across the board?
Yeah.
We're here at the Libertarian Party National Convention, and if Trump goes out there and says, "I'm gonna fire them all," the whole crowd just cheers, erupts.
Look, here's the thing. When I was his deputy for DNI,
important context for Kash, who's going to be on Trump's administration.
We did. People think it's a myth. They're like, you can't fire government employees. I'm like, why not? What? Well, it's a tradition. What?
It's a terrible tradition. We give up our traditions all the time.
I was
Let's
like,
get rid
it's
of
like
this
the DOJ telling me it's a tradition not to prosecute
So I'm a
presidents during
progressive in
presidential
this
year,
issue.
except Donald Trump. Right.
Yeah.
So we fired a ton of people. We eliminated a lot of waste. Nobody said anything. And also, if these people are in violation of internal regulations, which a ton of them have already admitted to during the Biden administration, going public, by breaking regs, you can fire them. So while you don't need to fire everybody, you could fire a ton of people, and
you could fire everybody though.
You
Feels
could.
like, but
we need some. There's a lot of good guys left in. I'm telling you, there's still a lot of good folks left in there.
Right.
I say the best government is no government, but that's my own personal opinion.
But there's
so
a myth
I'm biased.
There's a myth that people are like, oh, who's doing the books? The employee books or whatever. We need 4,000 employees to be appointed when Trump goes in. I was like, where'd you get this 4,000 number? Like, well, every president has said we need 4,000. Why do we need 4,000? Why not? Give me 500 good guys.
Yeah.
The other 3,500 are the people causing the problems that you end up putting in government. They end up being people like Fiona Hill, or John Bolton, or Mike Pompeo, or Mark Esper, or Gina Haspel, or Rod Rosenstein. I mean, the list goes on. Like, you don't need them all.
You know what it is? The way I describe this government program stuff is our nation gets a wound. We get a cut on our arm, so we put a bandage over it. What you should do is eventually rip the bandage off, clean it, and see if it's healed. Instead, what we do is we slap another bandage over it, then another bandage over it. These government bureaucrats are basically the only answer government seems to have. Well, I should say 99% of the time, because there are good people like Ron Paul. He was in Congress, he was in government. I get that, but typically it's who can we hire and how much more can we spend. Sometimes the problem is the spending and is the hiring. It's the person who works in a bureaucratic office who's like, I don't want to lose my job. And so there are perverse incentives to create issues or maintain issues so they don't lose their job. And that right now, I think, is largely with Donald Trump is obviously the right choice for this country right now. And I'm talking about the number one issue for the American people, and that's economics. The second and issue that actually rivals the first is immigration. Mm-hmm. Well, everyone trusts Donald Trump on those two issues. If you want to get into culture war issues on abortion and other things, that's totally fine. We can have that argument. But for the American people right now, they're concerned primarily about, are we going to get the economy going good? And the issue is, for the people who are bureaucrats in government, the economy goes south for them when Trump comes in and they get fired for being bad at their jobs. So now there's a perverse incentive among these people to jam up the system and support in any way they can systems that hurt Donald Trump, which means they're hurting the majority of the people of this country who need better leadership when it comes to paying their grocery bill.
Yeah, look, this is what the Joe Biden administration is setting up right now. He just released that he's going to sell 1 million barrels of the American oil reserve, right? He's doing that so gas stays down to $3 a gallon until election day.
Yep.
They're
Down to 3. How ridiculous is that?
Right, down to 3.
What was it when Trump left office?
We're used to higher prices now, so.
Oh, right. The reserves were full.
Yeah.
His brains calculate.
And there was definitely at least one opportunity
Gradual pure
for
acceptance.
Biden to refill the
But if he does, he buys, prices go up. He is attempting to rip off the American safety net, the American reserve, because he's trying to manipulate the market to try and stay in.
And he'll say, look at gas prices under me.
Yeah.
They're going down.
Well, he's doing that with the student loan forgiveness program as well, giving away money that is not rightfully his as well.
So I'm still paying off my law school debt because I told the Biden administration, F you, I signed an agreement. I'm going to pay it off.
Really?
And they sent me an email saying, oh, you've qualified yet again for the student loan forgiveness boondoggle. But people don't understand what it does to inflation. I mean, it sends our money cratering into an abyss.
So Kash is still paying
I went to the
for his
grocery store
debt.
the other day. It was $6 for a dozen.
And he
eggs.
actually got
I was
the opportunity to
what the
cancel
heck?
his debt.
Like peanut butter was like $4 a
He
jar.
took the higher
A
road.
loaf of bread was like $4, and I'm losing.
So the other day, this is important for everybody. I asked ChatGPT to give me a
Teaches us
diet
something
plan.
about Kash.
It told me to eat peanut butter and banana, and so I said, can someone run out and grab me some peanut butter? It was $4.60 for a small can of peanut butter.
It's ridiculous.
How is a family of 4? I grew up eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at lunch. That's what my family could afford. How's a family affording that?
They can't.
With
That's
gas.
the problem. They can't do anything, and this is why the Biden administration is trying to offer them all these other things.
Free
right?
things, student loan forgiveness.
But it's also with student loan, they tried to roll out the FAFSA. They changed all the questions. They're like, it's 100's too many. It's hard for minority families to figure this out. And then they roll this out like, we're the saviors of you. And then it's all botched. All of these kids are saying, like, I don't think I can enroll in college because you told me I had aid. Now I don't have aid. Like, even the things they think they've got a stranglehold grip on, being like, we're the best at getting people to college, they mess it up constantly. Like, not only are they lying to you, but they're incompetent. You can't just continue down this path for another 4 years.
When Donald Trump was running to be president a few years ago, he was running on auditing the U.S. Federal Reserve System.
Right.
And I remember hearing about that, and that got my interest in him specifically. When he was president, he wasn't able to achieve that. He did increase the national debt. He did spend a lot of money. Do you think he learned his lesson from his last administration with how much
JP,
money he spent?
we do our research.
Any kind of
We find
and overall, I do
the
think
next
he's going to do
qualified
better for the
candidate to
economy
replace
than
Trump
Biden.
after he's done with his term.
Clearly,
That's what we do.
The situation, especially with the more kind of
We don't be
populistic
complacent like we
policies
were
that he's pushing.
2018,
Will there
2019.
be less spending, and will there be kind of a change to the previous policies that did increase the debt?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you saw was Donald Trump spent in areas that weren't spent on before, that needed to be spent on to do things like build a border wall. But he also went overseas and took our money back. And I think you'll see a big windfall from going over to tariffing the Chinese and the CCP, or going to NATO and saying you're spending your money, and we, America, are not, and things like the UN need to get slashed in terms of funding and all these things.
But didn't Biden say that a tariff on the Chinese was a tax on the American people?
Right.
Just a couple years later, he then implemented tariffs.
Yep. Just a couple days ago, he did.
Is that what it was?
right. Yeah,
he
I'm talking about a couple years
days ago.
after he said, Trump does this. He says he's just taxing the American people.
That's right.
A few years later, he's like, I'm going to put tariffs in place.
It's the ultimate hypocrisy, right? Whether it's the gasoline thing or the food price thing or the student loan thing.
Remember his, I think it was one of his State of the Union addresses, was literally it was like a Trump speech. It was, I think, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He got heavily criticized for literally just saying a bunch of Trump talking points, and people were like, he's just lifting this.
Yeah, this is 1 week ago from the White House. President Biden takes action to protect American workers and business from Chinese unfair trade practices.
And I remember when Trump did it, the mainstream media lit him up for it. What do you mean you're going to tariff goods from? And it was a leverage point. It wasn't a threat. It was a leverage point to say, you, the CCP, stop doing all the illegal stuff against Americans and our allies. Stop spying on us. Stop spoofing our data. Stop stealing our information, and stop egging on bad actors like Russia, North Korea, and everybody else. And you know what happened? It worked. And also our coffers got a lot fuller because of those tariffs. So it's a leverage point. You use it in national security diplomacy as that.
I love this. There's two worldviews in the Biden establishment, uniparty, whatever you want to call it, in the MAGA Trump populist. It seems like Donald Trump's view is, hey, if we secure our borders, bring jobs to America, make our chips here, make our cars here. It's going to be great for the American worker. There's going to be jobs, wealth, and prosperity for Americans. And then the worldview of the Democratic Party and the Republican neocon establishment is, how about we don't do any of that? We build military bases all over the world, go to war with foreign countries, dictate where we build oil pipelines, and our foreign conquest will just give us the rights over the petrodollar, et cetera, and then we'll artificially inflate the currency and et cetera, et cetera. That's when we're looking at the war in Ukraine, when we're looking at the conflict in the Red Sea, when we're looking at Taiwan, when we're looking at, invading Iraq and Afghanistan, going back to the Bush administration, the uniparty of the United States has been, instead of having Americans get good jobs, support their families,
right,
let's just drop bombs on other countries to have control over oil.
Well, that's how things have been. Ukraine, I've always said this, and it's part of what I talk about in the book. The defense industrial complex does a lot of good, but they are the most evil empire that owns all of Washington, D.C. and this uniparty that you talk about. War is great for them. War is the best thing for them and everyone they own in Washington and everyone they're going to give a job to. I'll give you an example. When we fired Mark Esper out of the Trump administration for not following the lawful commands of the commander-in-chief, you know what he did? He went and got a $12 million payday at Raytheon. Okay, so they're just lying in
King David says
in the Ukraine, right?
They didn't want black-scale operations either. Look what Ben Carson went through at
and
Trump.
Just stop and make surface-to-air missiles for the next 7 years. That gets America's stockpiles back to neutral. So if someone attacked us right now, we don't have it, and we can't print it.
Secured
and we can't
borders,
make it.
reparations, the back dollar. Are you kidding
I've
me?
got billing
They
for the
have
next 20
attempted
years.
to
It doesn't matter if there's a
off
Republican or
this
Democrat
guy 15
in there.
times.
And so
My
that's why
sources
the
said.
Ukraine's the modern-day Afghanistan, and that's why these people are like, you got to print money, you got to print money, you got to print money, and it doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrats because they're owned by the DoD industrial complex, and that thing needs to be slashed.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, no. I actually
who are your
described
sources?
Ukraine as the Afghanistan of Europe because there's a lot of parallels there. There's always a lot of conflict there. And as soon as the Afghanistan was over, it was like the regime needed another war to justify a lot of their kind of more nefarious secret black ops activities. And now we have the Ukraine war, which is kind of propped up. But Donald Trump did spend a lot on the military. And according to Mike Johnson, it was essentially Donald Trump that recently helped pass this larger Ukraine military spending bill, essentially making it a larger loan component. Trump was kind of bragging about this a little bit as well. A lot of people saw this as something that raised a lot of questions about what his kind of politicking behind the scenes is. What did you make of that kind of larger move, since Mike Johnson and Lindsey Graham are kind of congratulating him on allowing Ukraine to now have $60 billion from us?
So look, from a political standpoint, Trump's in an almost impossible position. He's trying to win the presidency, and he's also trying so the Republicans don't lose the House. What do we have, like a 1-seat majority, 2-seat majority?
Basically.
So,
Shrinking soon.
I understand from a policy perspective why the conservative movement, the MAGA movement, is so ticked off about Ukraine and everything else. But what is Trump going to do? Go out and blow up Mike Johnson in the world stage and lose the majority? And then we have no levers in government till November? Like, we have to figure out a way to build on that. And what I keep telling people, I told people, was it last night in North Carolina GOP, was we, and I'm speaking for us, the MAGA movement, can't be 100% of the time. Like, there's going to have to be a give and take.
And I do think there's probably a lot of fear with, if the Republicans do lose the House majority, that thin line, Democrats are going to go nuclear against Trump right now.
Right. And that's the brilliant part of it, right? They are egging us on to try to oust the next Speaker of the House so that we lose in November the House of Representatives.
Did you like Mike Johnson as a speaker? Did you think it was a good choice?
I thought at the time he was a really good choice. I've known Mike a long time.
But would you have rather had
that's interesting.
Kevin McCarthy?
No.
Many were suspicious of Mike from the beginning.
That would have been an interesting choice.
I think Jim Jordan would be the best in that position. Yeah. But politically speaking, though, if the funding wouldn't have happened for Ukraine, the whole conflict would have blown up in the Democrats' face, and everyone would be pointing the fingers at the Democrats, at Joe Biden for failing and creating another Afghanistan.
They would.
And then Trump would have that larger political victory, being like, look at these guys, look at the mess that they caused in Ukraine, look how they screwed these people over. We didn't give them an inch here. They're the ones that prolonged this war. They're the ones that made it that much longer, instead of just kind of capitulating a little bit. I thought politically that would be the more advantageous move to make.
I mean, I'm sure there's a few different ways to have sliced it, but like, we keep getting Republican rhinos, and I forget the guy's name in upstate New York, who like literally resigned the day before there could be another special election.
Yeah.
to backfill that seat on purpose. So he's thinking like 3-dimensional chess. I got to counter that, and the next person that might think to do that.
Okay, so Kash just mentioned the 3D chess notion.
Well, to be fair, I think we're on like the sixth
heard that a lot.
dimension of Trump's chess playing now. The memes have escalated.
4D, 5D chess. What is it?
It's complicated. I do want to say one fact to your audience, though, that when I was chief of staff at DoD, this was the one thing that was just like blew my mind. So Germany, not 1945 Germany, 2024 Germany. Do you know how many bases we have in Germany? And do you know how much of the economy the U.S. DoD budget in Germany is?
I know it's a lot.
Now, today. We are 5% of their freaking GDP.
Wow.
Of Germany's GDP. The number one economy in Europe.
We never stopped. We never stopped occupying them.
What are we like? I'm all for having troops overseas, but that's ridiculous.
How many troops do we have in Germany? Do you know
that is
number?
ridiculous.
Over 55,000. Do you know how many we have in South Korea?
30-something. Right?
34,000. What? Like, I'm all for having our
Korea is different.
Right, obviously.
It's a very important country. We all respect it.
But you guys were talking about DoD budgets and everything, and the way you trim this. And look, I'm all for having the most gangster operation when it comes to national security. But we got to trim.
Bring them home. Bring the troops home. That's what Rand Paul ran on, and that's why he was able to get more support from the military than any other presidential candidate when he ran.
I just Googled it. This is from February 2nd, 2024. And it says there's 35K in Germany.
That's wrong.
24K in South Korea.
Yeah.
53K in Japan.
Yeah.
We occupied these countries, and we never left.
Never left.
And I want to stress this. Japan was
and money is
defeated
just funneling
in World
over there
War II.
forever.
The U.S.
endlessly.
occupied Japan and never left.
There's a whole division. The 3rd Marine Division was based out of Okinawa. So that's a whole division. There's only 3 Marine divisions. There's Camp Lejeune. There's 29 Palms in Southern California, and there's Okinawa. Now it's not. I think they've moved the 3rd Marine Division. I don't think it's there now, but it was there
for a long time.
For the longest time, the whole division.
At a certain point, I'm like, yeah, we can leave Germany. Like the Iron Curtain has fallen.
Let's accept this number. Okay, maybe can we have like 5,000 there? Do we need 30?
Do we need any? I mean, all international military bases?
How about
we don't need none?
All right,
how about zero?
I'm going to go on my own island on this one. We need some because we can't operate the national security platform in this modern day world.
I'd say they're both pretty sharp.
Our guys on the ground in
both Rand and Ron.
So Asia,
who's going to spy on Angela Merkel? Angela Merkel deserves to be spied on, like she was previously before by the U.S. intel agencies.
I agree. I don't know about those numbers, but I agree. But Phil.
Well, it is a good point. There, like one of the problems that we had before 9/11 was the fact that we had no human intelligence. There was no context. There weren't people in those places that you could talk to. Like there was nobody for the State Department to actually discuss like any kind of policy or anything like that. So or like find out who knew what. That's why it took so long to get Bin Laden and stuff. There was no human intelligence. So there's an argument.
Bin Laden?
What?
I got questions about that.
Oh, you want to talk Neptune's Spear?
We don't have to.
Let's go down the rabbit hole. I'm all in on it.
Oh, Kash is in on going down the rabbit hole.
And he was
That's interesting.
So, anyways, let's
go. Let's travel down a rabbit hole.
There is an argument that there is a use for the military to have some kind of context, but you don't need to have the full U.S. military in military bases with the amount of air power that the U.S. has with the capabilities of the Navy and stuff that we have. We can reach most places. I understand, inside Asia is really Asia's a big continent. I get that there are limitations, but still, we don't need to have military bases all over the world.
Can I just ask a question real quick?
What?
How many foreign military bases are there in the United States?
None. I mean, unless you count the Chinese FBI or the Chinese
police station.
Yeah, those.
Don't forget those and the farmland they're buying in North Dakota or wherever else.
Right.
But outside of that.
It's insane. I'm looking we got troops in Italy.
Oh, we got some nice shops in Italy. I've been to them.
12,400 in Italy.
Sweet deal.
It's wild to think that the U.S. has military bases in other
troops in
people's
Italy.
countries. It's just crazy to think. We are effectively we're the world police.
For free.
I'm not a fan of it.
For free.
I agree with you, and we should stop it. But there is at least it makes sense to address the reason why, which is nuclear non-proliferation. The point was to deter other countries from developing nuclear weapons, and we're not in that world anymore. And I get it, and we need to stop thinking like the Cold War. But at the very least, to talk about why, so that way the people that are listening understand why, because most people don't think of things in a Cold War mentality nowadays anymore, or they're unfamiliar with it. So to just say, oh, the U.S. military is in a bunch of bases around the world, people don't know what the thought process was, and they don't understand why. And they don't understand that the point was to not have every country get nuclear weapons and therefore increase the chances of nuclear war.
You know. Oh, your mic's off.
Your mic's off. Yeah.
Surge.
Ah.
I feel like I'm being oppressed as a woman. I just have to say it, and I'm just kidding. So where do we actually need bases? Like, why are we in Germany? Do we actually need to be there? What's critical for national defense?
So we need them all over the world. We just don't need as many, and we don't need.
Where do we need them?
Well, they're in Germany because of the larger policies against Russia.
Yeah, we keep them in places like Japan, Korea, Germany. We keep them in spots in the Middle East.
And then which ones do you close down?
It's just a selection process. Like, I'm not going to go out there and say you close down Germany. We need some bases there.
But which ones do we close, though?
You can't close. That's where I'm on my own island. You can't close the entire operation.
So you want to cut you want to cut it, but also you can't close them. How do you?
Cut it. Yeah, you
just reduce them.
Yeah,
I feel like that you should just close some of them. Do you really need all of them?
Oh, you're saying every base? No, there's tons you can close, but you can't close any one country. Is what I'm saying. Yep. Right? But you can't be like Japan. We're gone. Like that.
But we could.
That's my opinion. I don't think
he could.
But you can close a lot of them and shut them down and save a ton of taxpayer money. I mean, this is a collision course that people say, oh, now you're anti-military. I'm like, okay, that's funny. Yeah. But what Congress needs to do is come in and stop the government growth of these agencies they go to Congress every year. And I've worked on the Hill. And they say, oh, we're doing so well, we need 1,000 more billets, 1,000 more employees. And every year over the last 50 years, this is how this growth has happened in DOD
You're
land,
saying,
Intel land.
Ron Paul's not with the times. This is unreal.
I didn't know we had an Air Force base here. Where is this? Ilha Terceira?
It's our vacation spot, you know?
Yeah. But
just the Azores.
The Azores.
Oh, yeah. That's... Dude, you got to see like Diego Garcia and just
here's today's military showing military bases for Europe and Asia. So we have nothing in France. We got a lot in Germany.
It sounded like Kash almost just said Diego Garcia.
And then let's
maybe I misheard
go to the Pacific, and we can pull up every single.
And then there's also Guam as well. Of course.
Oh, we got a Coast Guard base. Is that Guam? Coast Guard, basically.
That way you have a place to get a tan.
What website is this?
Nearly as dramatic as I remember it looking last time I looked at all the U.S. military bases.
But when you look at the military-industrial complex, it's not just bases that are kind of key issues of concern. They have the American taxpayer in a stranglehold. There's so much pork. There's so much waste. When we look at what Halliburton did to the American soldiers in Iraq under the leadership of Dick Cheney, it is absolutely criminal what they did to our American U.S. soldiers. The military-industrial complex with their blank contracts are literally ripping off their American taxpayer, screwing over the U.S. military, and we are paying them top dollar for what when we're finding out that a lot of the times they rip us off. So just giving them a blank check, I think this is one of the key issues that I think Donald Trump absolutely needs to address since under his administration he was expanding the military. There needs to be larger accountability. There needs to be larger people coming in and being like, hey, stop ripping off the American taxpayer. We had enough. Stop wasting our money.
Well, the good news is the Space Force is only in the U.S.
Dude, the Space Force is awesome.
Somehow, what are they working on?
What's that?
Space Force was the one that they were putting in Colorado. Then there was a push to put it in Alabama.
It's in space.
We actually put it in Alabama under President Trump because it's a strategic move.
But this is something the Biden administration reversed.
They moved it back to Colorado. So basically, it's another defense industrial complex land grab, right? We wanted it in a strategic location for reasons that Space Force needed to be in a geographic location that's not Colorado. Mm-hmm. And Alabama came up, and it was good. It was viable, and it was a good option. It was a good pick. And then they came in and said, nope, we're not spending money there. We're spending money in Colorado.
Which is the opposite of what they did before with the
okay, so this is showing you the connection between the Trump administration, the mastermind Kash, and the Space Force. People were kind of wondering, like, who's pulling the strings and who? How are these entities connected? This is some good background here for
there was an image someone posted wearing their uniform, and it was green. And then all of these liberals online started making fun of the Space Force, saying, why are they wearing jungle camo if they're Space Force? And then someone actually made a spacesuit that looked like outer space with stars. And it's like a holy crap moment, because you're like, these people were legitimately serious in making fun of Trump and the Trump administration because Space Force personnel were wearing ground-based camouflage. And the question was, okay, first, do you think that if Space Force personnel end up fighting in outer space, they will be adrift outside of a spaceship? So they need second
BDUs.
right. Yeah. So someone
It's
actually made a
interesting to
uniform
imagine.
that looked like outer space. It's like, second, okay, first, if they are in outer space, they will be in spaceships, and in the event they're ejected from that spaceship for some reason, we want to be able to find them. So they wouldn't be wearing all black. And they legitimately were criticizing. My favorite response was, "Do you think someone said, do you think space conflict will be a bunch of people floating around in space shooting at each other?"
No, and they used it as a attack point because Donald Trump launched Space Force, not anybody else. DJT did it. And in his administration, the reason we did it and the reason he did it, and I think it's the right move today, is because space is where we are getting our asses kicked by the Chinese and the Russians. And they are literally, if you want to attack America, you do it through space and you do it underwater. And the fact that we don't have enough resources focused on that threat and that DJT made the decision to do it was one that probably everyone wanted to do. But like everything else, since he did it, it was a bad idea. Let's make fun of the uniforms. Something ridiculous like that. And now they're doubling down on,
and Space Force is one of the only branches that actually meets its recruiting levels, right? All the other branches are struggling. It's basically, Special Forces are okay, the Marines are okay.
I wonder why that is.
And then Space Force, because I think, to be fair, it is something people are really interested in. It's a new frontier. It has a similar aspect to when we were, launching rockets back in the day. But I agree with you. I think that's what felt so petty about being like, Alabama has this contract, we're going to put it here, and the Biden administration being like, no, Colorado, because we decided it. It seemed like just something to spite, and because Alabama's a red state and Colorado's governed by a Democrat
all politics.
Right now. Right?
It's all politics.
It's not about progress, it's about a victory in our pocket.
And we reverse it.
Right.
Cash.
And wasting time.
Yeah.
So I don't want to derail the conversation, but we've been talking about like military expenditures and stuff like that, and that kind of like those kind of payouts, like they really don't have a massive effect on the debt and the national debt, and that's the greatest threat to the U.S. right now is the national debt, because you're going to blow up the dollar. The economy is going to go in the toilet, and I know Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about Social Security, but that's the biggest driver: unfunded liabilities, like the mandatory spending. What are we going to do about that? Because if we don't do something about, like, we're spending more on interest than we are on military spending. You know what I mean? Every year, every 100 days, another $1 trillion is added to the debt. And 1 trillion seconds ago was 30,000 years before Christ. Just so people get a little bit of perspective on it. 30,000 years before Christ is 1 trillion seconds ago. We're adding $1 trillion to the debt every 100 days, and we have no plan to fix it. And that is the most immediate existential threat to the United States. Does he have a plan?
Trump does. I'm not going to unveil it. Trump for sure has a plan. I'm also going to tell you I'm not the economist. I'm like the only Indian that sucks at math. So I went the other route and did national security intel stuff. But I agree with you. It's not sexy, so people don't talk about it. They're just like, whatever.
So,
and also, the
national security intel stuff.
To be honest with you,
and Americans are not financially literate.
No,
right?
they're
They
not.
can't
Not
even.
involve
I
calculations.
don't fault them for this, but they have massive credit card debt. It's very difficult.
They're
for
fine with the
Americans
Chinese owning our debt.
because they don't understand debt. They don't understand how to leverage it. They don't understand how it works.
No, you're totally right. And then they're more and you can't really blame them. They're more immediately concerned with how do I take care of my family right now.
Right, which they should be.
It's fine, but you're right. The president needs to come in and address that. And I have seen President Trump's plan for it, and I think it's pretty awesome.
And the way that Trump can communicate with people is like he can really, if he has a good plan, he can sell it.
Yeah.
But he's got to have a good plan that's actually going to fix it. I haven't heard anybody that's made something that's really, sounds reasonable, like it'll actually fix the problem that isn't going to be undone as soon as a Democrat.
I think you would have heard more about it, but to Tim's point earlier, that normally it's the economy in election cycles, and I disagree with Tim a little bit. I think it's all border, and then people are starting to think about the economy. For the first time ever, people are like, I got to think about this national security
It's amazing
thing.
how immigration has
No, you're right, though. To clarify, there's two metrics, and there's two ways to look at it. Gallup basically did a breakdown, and they said, among all economic issues, when you ask, is the economy the issue, it's number one. And then for singular issues, the border is number one. Depending on how you look at it, the economy actually means a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Because Gallup actually broke it down. We're talking about homelessness. We're talking about wages. We're talking about rent. We're talking about, can I afford a home? Those are all different things within the economy. Immigration, I'd argue, actually is a component of the economy as well, because we're wondering about this homelessness.
100%.
So if you were to remove the idea of general economy and ask someone, are you concerned about wages? Nowhere near immigration. Immigration is the top singular issue.
It is, because it's affecting every single community in America, right? They pulled the Band-Aid off 3 years ago, and they said, the Biden administration said, there's no invasion, there's no national security crisis down there, and the mainstream media lied for 2 years. And now that it has literally flooded the country, and Americans are unfortunately seeing its tragic impact. For instance, CCP fentanyl killed 100,000 people last year. 100,000. That in and of itself is a national crisis. The FBI director and the DHS secretary came out to Congress 3 months ago and said, we caught at least 24 known foreign terrorists, and we let them go, and we don't know where they are today, which means they don't know the real number. And we have people coming in across the border and doing, unfortunately, tragic criminality like killing Lincoln Raleigh. And in my hometown of Vegas, 2 guys got murdered, just literally walking down the street by an illegal alien. Elderly women are getting raped.
This happened in West Virginia.
That's unfortunate.
It's huge news, because crime in West Virginia is slightly above half of the national average, meaning it's like 56% of the national average. You expect to be safe. People here are armed, and an illegal immigrant in Charlestown. He killed an old lady? Is that what it was? What was that story?
She wasn't that old. I mean, I thought she was in her 40s, but
a middle-aged woman.
Middle-aged woman. Like, the thing is, it's also small town vibes, right? Like, someone who is not from here comes in, commits violence, and can just escape. That was the problem with Lincoln Riley, which is that he was known to be in the country illegally. He had a previous criminal history in other states. And they were sort of like, we don't know what to do. Oh, well.
Well, because the mainstream media and the Biden administration and the Democrats for years had said there's no criminal problem. It's fine to be an illegal alien. And it's part of their the process to inject another rig job into an election by allowing, 10 plus million people so far. Half of them are getting voter IDs. People are getting hotel rooms. No, right. You don't even know the number, right? And that's the sad part. And that's what it took, though, for America and the world to pay attention to Donald Trump's effective policies on the border and to say he was right the entire time.
I'd love to ask him about the Help America vote verification system. You saw that story? I think it'll be too in the weeds for him as an individual.
Yeah,
I'll probably try and just mention it to him. But this is probably something.
When is he coming on? Is he?
I don't know.
Is he making a gradual progression with his security?
Administration showing a million plus people without IDs trying
DJT.
to register, and we don't have a clear answer as to what this is. It could be voter roll cleanup. Fine, sure, whatever. That would be an abuse of the system. Fine, sure, whatever. Some people are concerned it's non-citizens being given work permits, and then when they're granted tax ID numbers, TINs, or Social Security numbers for the purpose of work permits, someone, be it they themselves or NGOs or the federal government, are registering them. We don't know. I'm content to say it must be voter roll cleanup. An abuse of the HAVV system as per their own rules, but maybe that's it. Great. We need an inquiry. This should be looked into, because in the event it's not, we need to deal with it now before November.
No, you're right. In my home state, Nevada, it's not sexy. It's like the debt. Like, people are like, oh, who wants to register voters? Who wants to go clean the voter scrolls? And I'm like, no, I agree with you.
So is Kash from Nevada? Did he grow up there?
To do just that, and the Democrats are challenging it.
Of course,
to track the HAVV.
To clean the voter rolls, as you're saying, like make sure dead people aren't on it, make sure people that are on it are of age and are legal and can vote and all that.
I agree with that for sure, but I'm very concerned about what we're seeing with the Help America vote verification system. Notably, February 17th of this year in Missouri, let's pull up Missouri, 78,421 attempted registrations for people with no IDs. 23,000 were dead. So 23,000 are dead. And the response was that it's voter roll.
That's the story that Tim had covered before.
That's fantastic.
Didn't one of the states come out and say, no, that's
Texas,
not what we're doing? Yeah.
Texas said this is clearly a misunderstanding of some sort. These numbers are wrong. So let me jump to Texas week. I think we can do like May 4th. Texas reports every 2 weeks. May 4th was light. Let's see May 18th for Texas. I think it might be light as well. 4,000. Still decently high. But if we go earlier in the year, April 20th, let's see where they're at with Texas. We've got 249,770, of which 4,600 were dead. 200,000 came back as single match alive. So Texas said we are not doing voter roll cleanup. And these numbers are incorrect because we have not added that many people to our voter rolls. Whatever is happening here, we need a formal inquiry, nothing crazy, just to be like, oh, yeah, here's where the numbers came from. Here's why they're here. And then we know.
Yeah.
Because if we don't do that, you've already got people feeling like if it's Texas, what makes sense for Texas? They're not doing voter roll cleanup. Then where are I think we're at 1.9 million people registering coming from? Well, I know where there's a big number over the past year that reaches around those numbers of people that may be coming here. Many people believe it may be illegal immigrants being given work permits. And then the NGOs just submit that for voter registration because there's a social security number attached to it. I don't know if that's true. All I know is this is the kind of thing that has people freaked out, especially the 30,000 dead in Missouri. And we want to know, we want to know formally and officially what it is. Texas comes out and says, we don't know what that number is. If Texas and Missouri, if Trump wins every swing state and Texas and Missouri by narrow margins flip, Trump loses.
Oh, yeah, overnight. And, this is the thing that I've been trying to tell people.
Yeah, so it is a big deal.
Like, I don't know, 5 years now. State attorney generals and state secretaries of state control these issues. And that is why people are like, oh, how come we didn't fix this federally? I'm like, you can't fix it federally. It's impossible. You have to rely on these state AGs to bring lawsuits to clean voter rolls. It's not cool. It's not fun. It's not the thing that gets headlines. But that's why that's why I was yelling at Republican state AGs to be like, why aren't you prosecuting Hunter Biden in, say, Missouri for committing crimes? And the Democrats would do it overnight. But it's the same thing, whether it's the voter thing or the criminality thing. The state AGs, for the most part, have been very quiet on the Republican side. And I literally have no idea why. I don't know.
Do you think it's like election concerns? Because with all of this, like, it really matters who's in our voter rolls. It matters who's in our country. And I think there is a level of people don't want to talk about the issues that they think might risk it. Like, for me, I think we should talk about the border. I think we should talk about the effect of illegal immigration. But I do think we should have a conversation about reducing the pathways for legal immigration because they become abuse, like chain migration. If someone were to cross into the border illegally, have a child here,
the pathways are abused.
Birthright citizenship, you could then use that person to sponsor tons of people. We should limit it maybe to an immediate family. But when you start talking about it, it's very easy for a Republican to get labeled as like a heartless person. You want to separate families. Yeah. You're mean. You're hurting the American dream. It's sort of, to me, it seems like it's a question of, well, maybe I can stay in office and do better. Like that.
We are in a spiritual war,
assessment is coming up with stay quiet when it really should be encouraging them to be bold in what they're doing.
And that's a example of what DC does to everything, right? They will overcorrect and mislabel. And then when a guy like you or a guy like you or a guy like me comes out and says, hey, yeah, we want to address immigration, you're a racist. Like, that's the response, right? No, we're going to
But it's to stop the entire conversation, right?
That's
like,
the whole point.
That's what I find interesting about Donald Trump. It really has encouraged people to talk about illegal immigration, especially the border. That's great. That's really important. And I think then the next step is to talk about our legal immigration system. Are there things we can be doing to ensure that Americans are the priority for our government and we're not just looking towards outside migration to solve all our problems?
But you can't say that because you're not.
Well, you're a word. You're an ism.
I'm just saying that's
you say that.
No, exactly.
During the presidential debates here at the Libertarian Party convention, they had a conversation on immigration. Because the Libertarian Party is cut down the middle between open borders and closed borders factions.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yep. And so there's one guy who's running, and I suppose by the time this airs, we'll know who the presidential pick is. But for the time being, we're recording it in the morning. We don't know. And one guy said he's for Ellis Island style immigration. And then someone else basically called him and said, you're basically saying open borders or not. And then it's open borders. The Ellis Island style immigration is the soft way of saying open borders, meaning anyone can come. We stamp their form, hand it to them, say, welcome to America. You are free to live and work and do as you please, which maybe... you go back. Here's the funny thing.
Half the Libertarian Party supports that?
I don't know if half or like,
but it's been a long-running debate.
Yes, the open borders versus closed borders factions.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but the Mises Caucus won, and I believe Mises Caucus is closed borders, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I know a little bit about the Ellis Island system, right? I looked it up. It didn't work. So, in the late 1800s. They had states handled immigration to their states, and the federal government said, it's not that much. We're not worried about it. Once the number reached around 500,000 a year, they said, we need a federal way of controlling for this and tracking this more properly. So they created the Ellis Island system. People would come on boats, they'd process and say, yeah, you're good to go. This was about 500,000 people per year for, I think, 60 years. Or maybe less, actually. But I think I think it might have been way less than that, actually. And so after this, they said, hey, wait a minute, we're having serious problems because the number just keeps going up. The better America does, the more people want to come here. We can't do it this way. We need to better control the system. Going back in time to the way we did at Ellis Island, does not account for the fact that you've got, at any given moment, 20 plus million who want to come here. And so I was actually talking to a libertarian guy, and I was like, I agree with Trump. Trump said, he said something like, all of the immigrants of the world, all of them, they can come here legally. You got to come here legally.
Yeah.
Legally means there will be a set number. It'll be restricted. There will be assistance with integration. But there are people here at the party who think, stamp them, come on in. Here's your ID.
I can't believe that. That just blows my mind.
This is what they're doing now. This is literally the Biden administration's plan. It's the rubber stamp, welcome to America. And you've got the black community in Chicago saying, and I quote, we are being replaced. Kind of wild to hear that coming from Chicago.
Especially illegal immigration, but a lot of immigration that we're encouraging right now hurts people who are in impoverished situations or in inner cities. So it's not like the Biden administration is doing anyone they claim to be supporting any favors by encouraging in a really broad open door policy.
From the very beginning.
Ultimately, this weird Band-Aid solution,
just
right?
because this is such a nation of immigrants.
Oh, well, the birth rates are low, but it's okay because we can have immigration from other places. Not only is that bad for American culture, which I think is something like you have to live here, be a part of, actively contribute to, but it's also saying to the American people, like, we don't actually think you're that important. We'd actually rather replace you. Like, what is that kind of leadership, and why would you vote for that?
It's the new rig job, right? Traditionally, for the last 3 decades, the Democrats have gone out and bought the minority vote. And you're talking to a son of lawful immigrants whose family literally fled a dictatorship, moved here with nothing, and then did it the right way, and then watched their son rise up to work for Donald Trump, which is pretty cool. But that's what the American dream should be. That's our culture. That's what I tell people. And people are like, "Oh, you're against illegal immigration." I'm like, "Yeah, I am." Because 1, you don't represent me. 2, you bought our votes when we were younger and lied about it. And now the movement, since we've exposed that through Donald Trump, is, okay, we can't buy the minorities anymore. We're going to buy the illegal vote. And that's what they're doing. This is why 25,000 people showed up in Crotona Park. It's unheard of. It's literally 99% black and Hispanic.
They booed AOC.
And they booed AOC.
Yeah.
Because you nailed it. They exposed the flank that is minorities were being bought by the Democratic Party for votes. Now they've done nothing for them. Crime is surging. And now the Democrats are replacing the minorities with illegals, not just in terms of jobs, but because they need votes, because the minorities are now no longer voting for Democrats. They're all voting for DJT.
They want a subservient, compliant voter class. And I think that's horrendous. This is something that we should be opposed to and expose for what it is, right?
100%.
Yep.
Well, they're taking away their social services as well, which has a lot of people in the black community
which is word of mouth, because the mainstream media is totally compromised.
But it seems like every 4 years they're like, hey, we'll pander to you here just for your vote. And they keep giving it to them.
Here's the best part about this. Every 4 years, the reparations question comes up. The Democrats say, why are we getting reparations?
Bob Cunningham has an interesting comment.
Literally, it goes nowhere.
The bankrupt U.S. Corp is not living. The plan is a reconstituted republic with new sound U.S. Treasury issued commodity-backed money that is no longer world reserve currency. The NGO Roth's debt has been taking over our world and will be eliminated in totality, with gold replacing the debt system to become neutral, stateless, zero counterparty risk, world reserve asset.
They say that Donald Trump is going to get.
Well, yes, that's what the Ingersoll Lockwood individuals hint to us every now and then.
Right. If it's true.
And also the U.S. debt clock individuals, whoever's behind that.
Win if their support ever drops below 80%. If Trump really is polling at 23 and he really does get it, it's impossible for him to lose.
I think. Right, if those stats hold,
those numbers are true,
and I would add one thing,
and they never do
in the right states, right? In the states that vote, like California, it's irrelevant. I'm not saying the minority vote is irrelevant. I'm saying California is irrelevant for electoral purposes. And I remind people though that the single state that had the largest number of votes for Donald J. Trump in the last election was the state of California. And we are still never going to win California in our lifetime unless something changes. But places like
things can change,
New York
Kash.
into play, and this is kind of the sheer backfiring of the Democratic mission to take out Trump via prosecution. I don't know that he would ever have campaigned this much in New York City. But now he's in New York City. He's on the Jersey Shore with 110,000 people. He's in Crotona
Absolutely
Park.
agree, Don
He's
Frost.
Keep going. And he
There
figured
should be
out a way
some
to
criteria
say,
for
you're going to
acceptance.
gag me? Okay, well, I'm just going to
We shouldn't just let anyone come on over to the country.
And then I'm going to take this show on the road in New York.
And
it's unbelievable.
With all the media attention.
Your mic cut out.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I don't know. I got to keep my hands off the table. The mainstream media.
Yeah, no one's
made
going to
fun
show
of
up.
him. They were like, "Oh, he's having this rally because he thought he'd be in court, but now whatever." It's like they can't acknowledge that he's doing something Democrats should have done, which is go to the Bronx, right? Like the Democrats take the Bronx for granted. They think you're going to vote for us no matter what. We don't need to be here. Wasn't it Roger Stone? I saw this tweet from him that was like the last Republican to come here was Ronald Reagan, and he won. Like
84. Yeah.
Isn't that important? Shouldn't we acknowledge that there is diversity of thought there instead of just treating them like the Democrats do and being like, well, you're in the bag and there's nothing you can do about it?
Yeah, so to add on to your guys' point, like if the minority and the black vote comes through for Donald Trump in places like that, like if he takes New York, game over. Like New York and New Jersey, like the electoral map just exploded against the Democrats, and they can win California all day long, and the rest of the swing states don't even matter because the number of electoral votes in New York. Mm-hmm. And so I think, but you're seeing it metastasize. The same thing's happening in Minnesota and Michigan. And this is why Joe Biden, again, is pandering to the pro-Hamas movement overseas. A foreign terrorist organization is being propped up by this administration to purchase votes in Arab-rich Michigan and Minnesota. But you're seeing it backfire there, too. This is why Donald Trump is going out to Michigan and Minnesota, to the minority communities. It's basically the Bronx over there for that specific style of minority, and he's winning them over because he's exposing the exact same thing. He's like, the Democrats are coming here and have been coming here to buy your vote. Is your life better right now? Are your communities safe? How's your kids' housing and education going? Mm-hmm. And do you feel like you can have a future in this country? And the minorities are saying, wait a second, we were actually maybe better off where we came from for the first time in like forever.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think this is the big cultural shift that I think especially progressive media didn't want to ever come to, right? They never wanted to acknowledge that they were just paying lip service to things that they said. Whereas like you have a strong cultural understanding of like what it means to be American, especially like, your parents came here a lot. My parents are immigrants. I know
Zero Regrets says Michigan will go red.
I believe in the system. I'm going to uproot my
life. I think we have a fair election, but Michigan was red in 2020. Michigan will stay red.
It's very, very different than being told, like, don't worry, we'll just give it to you and your life will get better. And I think that mentality is, it shows such a difference between the right and left in this country. And I think it's ultimately obvious to everyone that one is not sustainable and it's not moving you forward.
Here's a wild thought experiment, right? Look at all of the groups that are coalescing behind Donald Trump now because of what he's exposed, the corruption. People want accountability. People want a better America. But if Donald Trump were president right now, would all of this have ever been exposed, right? Like if he went back-to-back terms, right? I don't know, maybe, right? But he'd be running the country. And a lot of the people that have come out for Donald Trump would not have seen the information that has been put out there. Now, of course, I want Donald Trump to have been president then and next time, but it's just an interesting thought process because I don't know that I would have been able to reach a lot of the communities I'm reaching right now if I didn't have the ammunition that the Biden administration has given us.
Do you think that there's a benefit to having this, if or when Donald Trump wins in November, he'll go in as his final term. He had like a time off period to reflect, to see what's going on. I've heard some people say, actually it'll be like 4 years of lame duck syndrome, but I wonder if it's actually sort of freeing because you're not trying to get reelected. You can just do anything you want. Not anything you want, but like you could have a really serious impact without having to worry about how it affects
campaigns are brutal. I'm not even the campaign guy, right? And having the ability to go in there and say, I don't have to go out there and fundraise $1 billion. I have to go raise $1 billion to try to run for president of the United States and then fight the mainstream media and then go to every state and then host a rally and then do debates and all this other stuff. You mean I can just go govern? And I have the knowledge that I had from my first administration and the interim 4 years, and I could put personnel and policies in place and I can just go, Donkey Kong in DC. I think it's going to be pretty cool, and I think and I hope that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, this is definitely a make or break moment, not just for Donald Trump, but for this country.
Email list.
100%.
There's always these kind of two larger factions within the Trump administration and the Trump camp. There's the kind of Marco Rubio, Nikki Haley, John Bolton, Bill Barr, Anthony Fauci, Gina Haspel, Jared Kushner kind of neocon establishment side. And on the other side, you have people like Roger Stone, yourself, Steve Bannon, Michael Flynn, Trump Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy that represent kind of the America First side. Which side do you think is stronger now? And is there anything that we could do to help spur on more of these kind of Freedom Caucus populist representatives inside of a potential Trump administration? Is there anything we could do from the outside pushing more for these populist policies?
I think what you're seeing is people in these other groups paying attention more than they ever have. to non-mainstream media outlets. And for me, that's the most important. Your show here is like one of the most powerful shows that has impacted communities with actual truth. And that's why I'm able to go out there and say, oh, you stop watching the mainstream nonsense, and we can talk about a two-tier system of justice. We can talk about defense budgeting. We could talk about who and when and why the Washington, D.C. establishment is so corrupt. And that message alone has empowered DJT, I think, to, one, make the decision to come on your show, which I thought was brilliant, and two, speak to an audience base that has never been spoken to before, and pull them in and say, what are some of your values? We're not going to be able to get you 100%, but maybe we pick up on a couple of things you guys care about along the way. And that's what's bringing it together.
Two big things for this show. First time we had Marjorie Taylor Greene on, we were inundated with comments and emails from people saying, I had never heard Marjorie Taylor Greene speak before. I thought she was crazy. And Marjorie came on and talked about how Congress is corrupt and broken and things she's trying to do. Bannon, same exact thing. First time Bannon came on, wave of comments from people being, I've never heard this guy talk before, and I thought he was crazy. And they were like, he kind of sounds like an Occupy Wall Street guy. And I'm like, he does. It's remarkable that Bannon can go in front of a bunch of MAGA Trump supporters and say, tax the rich.
It's unbelievable.
I know, like, it's populist. And I think, I believe that most people who are watching this are regular people who got pulled into politics because the Democratic Party went nuts.
Yeah.
And these are people who probably went to the, not everybody. I know there's a lot of libertarians who watch, there's a lot of Trump supporters who have been conservative for a long time. But I do know there's a lot of people it's really simple. We found that our biggest audience is Chicago.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean it's
hometown advantage over there.
Well, yeah,
it is.
It's spread out.
Right.
It's spread across the country, and so it's fairly even. But there's a slightly higher percentage coming from Chicago than anywhere else. So the plurality, despite the fact that it's fairly even, is Chicago. And I thought, that really makes sense. I'm from Chicago. I have moderate Chicago sensibilities. Chicago doesn't have a Republican Party. Like, it does. But
it doesn't.
So if you're in Chicago, there's only Democrats to vote for, or unaffiliated, which is just Democrat. And if you are someone who's critical of their failed policy of the past 100 years, you're still a relatively liberal guy, but you are sick of the corruption you see coming from the Democratic Party with this uniparty rule in this one place. I think a lot of people watching this show probably feel similarly to, I'm not a Republican, I didn't grow up conservative, the Democrats have gone insane, the Republican Party sucks, Trump represents something different.
But that lane has never been built before, in my opinion, and it's never had a leader like DJT in that little lane. And what the Democrats and mainstream media are coming in and doing now, in my opinion, is trying to blockade that lane and label it and say, if you're in this lane and you've never been a Republican or a Democrat before and you support Trump, you're a domestic terrorist.
You're a terrible
No, literally.
person.
No. That's what they're saying. They've literally said those MAGA supporters are
much
domestic
appreciated.
terrorists.
Zero regrets.
Like people are like,
for those of you who are viewing on YouTube, please hit the like button.
Publication you want.
For those of you who are viewing on X, please retweet.
Like, I want a closed border. I don't want drugs in the community. I want law enforcement to do well, and I want America to be prosperous.
It means you're a bad person and no one should listen to you.
But the point, exactly. But they're labeling people.
Yep.
And the fact that they're labeling these new people that are coming into politics who have never been there, that literally, like, I had a guy come in for pest control last week, and he goes, dude, I have never even voted in my life ever before. I'm going DJT all the way. We didn't even talk politics.
He just said this out of nowhere.
Oh, no, dude, I got one.
He doesn't know anything about you, and he's like, I just got to open the floor with this.
Then he Googled it, had my name. He was like, oh, crap, that's hilarious.
I'm in a shuttle bus in Chicago, going to the airport, going from the airport to the
Tim Pool doesn't take shuttle buses. Come on now.
I'm
a man of the people.
From the car rental place to the airport is a shuttle bus, and it's just me and my girlfriend and the bus driver, and he's like a young black guy, and he just goes, "Who y'all voting for?" And then I was like,
"Best polling you can get."
And I was like,
literally,
before I could say anything, I was like, "Well, I think," and he goes, "Just say it."
Just say it.
And I started laughing. I was like, "Are you for real, dude?"
Oh, wow.
I was like,
it's coming
I
to
was gonna
joke.
say Donald Trump. I wasn't gonna just.
The elephant in the room
Trump
is so large.
You did. I was gonna say something more like,
the crap.
I'm probably gonna vote for Donald Trump. I think, or actually, I'm voting for Donald Trump because of, I was gonna give him a long answer.
politics are taking this.
But you made a very
good
point, Kash, because all the power we gave to the government to stop terrorists is essentially being used to terrorize us.
Yes.
And they did it under the Bush neoconservative kind of regime that kind of set up this national security state that we're fighting up against. I want to ask you this question because I think it's an important one, especially when it comes to picking the next vice president of the United States.
Tim Pool.
There's been a lot of conversations, silly conversations about, Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there is some serious consideration with Marco Rubio. He does represent that kind of Bush neocon faction. Is there anyone that you particularly are vying for to be the next VP yourself?
This is interesting.
Those exact conversations I'll keep between me and the boss, but I will publicize the following. What I told him was, honestly, sir, I almost don't care who you pick as long as you don't pick the following.
Okay.
And what I don't want
don't pick
is
Nikki Haley.
Repeat Mike Pence. What I don't want is
we
someone
don't need Mike Pence. You're right about that.
who is running your administration for intel and DOD and counterterrorism and all this stuff to get an order from you to go back into your White House to fight 7,000 people and slow down your order. Don't pick someone who's going to be auditioning to be POTUS in 4 years. Yeah. And there are folks like that out there. There are the Ben Carson types out there that I think you can go to that are maybe a little quieter and not as sexy of a pick. And so to me, what I told the boss was, I'm sure everyone's going to be yelling at him for the next 2 months while he decides. I think he's already picked who he's going to pick.
He's implying.
I've heard rumors.
Don't go after Ben Carson. I'm confused.
He doesn't pick someone who's going to, people before Nikki Haley, was going sideways. They were like, oh, you got to pick her as VP. And I was like, what? No, don't pick her. And you can't, and there's also the issue with Marco. It's nothing personal against Marco, but the 15th Amendment issue is real with Marco Rubio, which most people don't even know about. You can't have a VP and president from the same state. Yeah. It's a legitimate constitutional thing. So he'd have to do a whole host of things and move and stuff like that for that to be a real consideration.
Yeah. He's also the intel kind of deep state guy, and I think it's very important for Donald Trump to understand that if he puts another kind of establishment rhino as his VP, that the system is going to be more incentivized than ever and probably carry out procedures to try to take him out immediately as soon as he takes office. So I think it would be advantageous for him, from my political understanding, to get someone who's an outsider, to get someone who's anti-establishment, who scares the establishment more than Donald Trump, to safeguard his position in power.
Exactly what Swami it is then.
I might be wrong on the number, but there's an amendment that specifically states your vice president cannot be from the same state.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 17 or whatever. I'm not the constitutional genius.
So no math, no constitution.
Yeah. Well, since from going back to my public defender prosecutor days, some constitution. Actually, that's been my driving force. I think that's what 12th. There you go. What's caused so much of this popularity in a lot of these other sectors that we've been talking about in the communities is no one has paid attention to constitutional due process, but they're like, whatever, I don't care. And the people that have been destroyed by the unconstitutional due process have been minorities. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump's coming in and exposing and saying, I'm going to help you, and I did help you with his Crime Restoration Act and helping minorities in the past administration. I think it's just this huge confluence of events.
But that's why they have to label him like this extremist who hates everybody and hates foreign or whatever it is, because if the Democratic Party, which has marketed itself as we're the party of minority voters, reveals that they have not actually done them any favors, then they are really threatening their reputation going forward, and they already seem to be fairly dysfunctional. I mean, the idea that Donald Trump actually has inroads is something they can't face because it's something they pretended they were, the champions of for so long.
Yeah, they owned him, and it's just like Donald Trump's presidency. Donald Trump came in not as this neocon conservative. He came in as a guy who was like, I'm going to end the forever wars. And the Democrats no, that's our deal.
He was pointing the finger at Bush and Saudi Arabia for their involvement in 9/11, which was huge. And I was like, holy cow, I can't believe Donald Trump is actually talking about this on the national stage, breaking the orthodoxy, talking about these larger truths that got everyone so energized about him. And we need that talk more than ever now.
When he said to Jeb Bush, your brother lied?
Yes, about 9/11. Not only that, he made other kind of statements about this.
Dude,
he talked about investigating 9/11. He talked about auditing the Federal Reserve. Those are the populist kind of sentiments that resonated with so many Americans.
Hey, well, the Federal Reserve is a whole other deal. Anyway, the other thing that I put in the book that I recommended the boss to do hits on this. We need a 24/7 declassification office.
Yes.
Rolling papers out 24/7. And not just like JFK,
yep.
and not
we
just
do.
9/11.
We need
You're talking
Kash.
for the whole 9/11 report. and those 7 pages that people talk about. But I believe, as like the guy who is an intel
it'll
guy
cause
who
a constant
believes
news cycle
wholeheartedly in the classified system of information, I believe that it has been over abused.
It will overtake the mainstream media news cycles
to hide the truth and enact more corrupt activities. So what I told the boss is like, I don't care what you call it, truth and reconciliation, whatever, come up with a better name. But every agency
Vivek's not ready. He came out of nowhere. We don't know him yet. Says Zero Regret 67.
I believe you could get half out.
Yeah, there is
the
a trust issue. Can't argue with you there.
I'll always argue that it does serve a purpose, but like you're seeing in these documents in the Jack Smith case, they're just redacting.
This is where intuition comes in.
That they broke the law.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's used to protect themselves,
and it's a public.
Intuitively, I think I would take
court,
the risk given the circumstances that we're in, but it's a role.
We can have you run that office. You can come in and just be like, hey, I want all the Saudi documents.
I'll gladly do that. I'd be so happy.
So Luke will be the press secretary for the Libertarian Party.
The declassifying
the viceroy of declassification.
Absolutely, I like that.
There you go.
I'm in. Where do I sign up?
Yeah. But I think that's how you earn the respect. Like you said, Donald Trump started talking about these things. Then we started putting these documents out there. And remember when I ran Russiagate, right? They came after me and said, if you put out the Nunes memo and you put this out that you wrote, our enemies and our allies are going to get murdered. No one died.
Do you think we had Don Jr. on? One of our callers said, pardon Assange, Ulbricht, and Snowden. Mm-hmm. And Don Jr. said 100%. We're well past the point where there's a conversation. So I don't want to speak for him too much because I can't remember his exact quote, but he said basically yes at this point. Do you think Julian Assange should be pardoned, and do you think Trump would be willing to pardon him?
I don't know what the boss wants to do. We haven't had that specific conversation. Me personally, and I'm probably going to piss off a lot of people, I don't think what Assange did was pardonable. Like, I think it was such an egregious act that screwed me in the field as an operative.
What did he do?
By disclosing the information, like some pieces of information that we use operationally, like we have to pull a shit ton of stuff down.
But he's not charged for that.
No, right. He's not charged for that, but he's charged for espionage.
Yes. Yep. So I think facilitating access or something.
It's basically the charge that says you let this information out. So like there's a difficult give and take for me there, because same thing with Snowden, right?
Just to clarify real quick, I think I could be wrong. They say that Julian Assange assisted Bradley Manning, and that makes it not journalism. Would it have been that Assange just published information? There's nothing, but their argument is that Assange assisted the facilitation of the exportation of the information.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a difference, because it's just getting the information out.
Well, journalists are allowed to get information out, even if it pisses off the government. But the argument is when you actually go into government and facilitate the
when you go in and pull it out, then it's the same type of crime. Like Donald Trump is charged with illegally possessing classified documents, right? That's what they're saying. The journalists, in my opinion, journalists shouldn't have those classified documents. What they should have is the documentation from the government that they've been withheld that exposes
correction.
Information.
I mean, assuming this stupid AI is right, it's actually both. It's not just the conspiracy to commit intrusion, but also the intrusion, the publication of.
Yeah.
So you were correct. I think the first one, publishing stuff. Pardon, you can't do that. I don't whether or not he actually conspired with any. I don't know that I believe that, but
yeah. I mean, the videos, the documents that he released were for the public good, for the public interest, and they revealed a lot of the things that the U.S. government was lying to us about. And I think this is why it was considered an act of journalism rather than kind of an act of sabotage.
And I think there's a way to lawfully do that. Like, I think there's a way for to. The point is, people now know that a lot of times the U.S. government has lied to them, and has done stuff for their self-interest over the American citizens. And my point to the president was when I was like, dude, I'm the Russiagate guy. Like, I figured out the FBI lied to the world. Hillary paid for it. Like, you gotta just give me like 27 seconds. Like, let's put this stuff out. And it was a monster fight to get the Nunes memo out, to get all those documents out. But there's a way to do it. Now that Americans know that other stuff exists, I think President Trump's strongest point, and I think he said this publicly, is like he's going to have one of these offices or commissions that puts this stuff out, and everyone can request information, be like, hey, I want the Bay of Pigs.
I'm not sure why Kash feels like Assange should be in jail for much of his life, because he worked with somebody to facilitate the release of information that was helpful for public interest. I'm confused in that part.
There's a challenge with the Assange stuff I can't see what evidence they have.
So Assange should not be pardoned.
I don't think you can criminally charge someone for publishing information. The newspapers all did that. I also kind of feel like it's been 12 or 13 years that the dude's been effectively in solitary. So where is
he now? Like High Marsh Prisons or something?
Is that
it's Belmarsh? Why would you know, Kash?
I believe so. Yep.
Like,
I'm kind of at the point where it's like, damn, like
it's been a minute.
He's your enemy.
Yeah. So even if there's an argument to these things, I feel like there's a lot of goodwill in just being like, we're going to drop this one. It was mishandled. It's poorly done.
Yeah, he already paid his price. He already was tortured in solitary confinement. He already was serving a huge jail sentence without being found guilty. So.
Right. There's a lot of merit to that. Right. It didn't happen yesterday. It happened a dozen
many years ago.
But the issue being that they first falsely held him on this ridiculous molestation charge, which
took him how many years to clear, right?
And they dropped it, and it was BS the whole time. And then as soon as that happens, he gets raided. My understing,
there's some stuff we don't need to know. There's other stuff
Trump
that
himself ordered Assange
should
to be
know
arrested
way more
for
than we need to know. I mean, we're allowed to know.
Well, it did happen under his administration,
right.
And according to some sources that I've talked to, there was some kind of backroom dealings and conversations specifically about revealing sources, which Assange refused to do so, and therefore was automatically kind of dragged out. Where the head of the CIA, there was Barr literally talking about assassinating and taking out, Julian Assange.
I'll tell you the theory and rumor that circulates behind the scenes is that with the WikiLeaks email, the DCCC emails, I believe it was, and the DNC stuff, there's a question as to where Julian Assange got it from. Of course, the Seth Rich theory flies around, and Julian Assange made several statements about Seth Rich as if to imply, without directly saying, Seth Rich may have been the source. Now, the corporate press, of course, says this is ridiculous. It's not true. He was just a victim of a robbery. The conspiracy theory behind the scenes. And I don't like saying conspiracy theory because this is actually people in D.C. and in the Beltway have spread this rumor. And it's a rumor that Trump wanted the information from Assange as to his source of these emails because, one, national security interests, and two, it could actually prove a criminal conspiracy behind the scenes, so targeting him specifically or his administration or any of his priorities. And the idea was go to Assange and say, give us the proof who this was, Seth Rich or otherwise, and you're a free man. And Assange said, never, won't do it. So then Trump said, if you don't, we're going to arrest you and bring you to the U.S. and have you testify. And so the theory goes that Assange said, I will never reveal my sources under any circumstances. And they said, then we're going to bring you here and make you talk.
So I can't speak directly to that. I wasn't involved in that. But the DNC server intrusion is probably the greatest single subject to talk about right now for all of this, because the left-wing media put the hack on Russia so they could tie Donald Trump to Russia collusion.
Exactly.
Right.
And if Trump could prove that it was not true, then it destroyed the whole narrative.
Then he gets exonerated. But here's how deep it gets, right? For the first time that I'd ever heard in FBI history, they allowed a private entity, CrowdStrike, to go in and exploit the DNC servers, but only whatever CrowdStrike wanted to exploit. And they never handed those servers over to the FBI, so the FBI could have exploited them and we could have had the answers. But I think it's because they knew it was not a Russian hack. And I do believe Julian Assange probably knows who did it, right? And it would have exonerated Donald Trump and the entire Russia collusion narrative. But this goes to the bigger problem in D.C. about why did James Comey allow some random software tech firm to go in there and exploit the data off the DNC firm? Do you know who the owner and CEO of CrowdStrike is? Sean Henry. Do you know what he used to be? James Comey's assistant at the FBI. So, like, the whole narrative could have been destroyed.
So this is what makes the whole story kind of plausible. Donald Trump thinking about, one, his personal interests, but also national security interests.
Yeah.
If there really is a criminal conspiracy to frame him as a Russian agent and Hillary Clinton...
Someone should be prosecuted for it.
And all he needed was for Julian Assange to say, my source was this. And Julian Assange would not do it because Julian Assange, for WikiLeaks, the moment he ever gives up a single source, WikiLeaks ceases to exist.
Right.
So then this is where this rumor comes from. There are people who claim that they were involved in conversations related to this. And
I wasn't. I don't know.
Not saying you were.
Yeah.
But that Trump basically was like, this is a guy who is wanted by the United States as it is. Though there was a grand jury at the time. He was still yet unindicted. And the rumor goes that Trump said, if he comes here and testifies and gives us a statement, we blow the lid off of the Russiagate hoax and the people involved. it's a challenge for me because I'm like, for the sake of this country, we need that information.
The others, and I'm just spitballing here, so this is coming off the top of my head, because you got to remember who ran the FBI and DOJ. Even though it was during a Trump administration, they hated
mistakes.
They hated Trump, right?
Why didn't he fire him?
I know.
He hired a lot of them, and we hope he doesn't hire them.
This is a question for Kash.
Big thing, but
Kash may have more intimate understanding of Trump's mind and his reasons for firing or hiring.
In between, right? They prosecuted Julian Assange to shut him up.
Yeah.
Right? Donald Trump had nothing to do with it, right? They, the FBI and DOJ, who created Russiagate and were in on the scam, they know who hacked the DNC servers. The guys and gals that have been working on that case for like 6 years, they have the answer. And the only way to keep it closed loop is by going out and prosecuting Julian Assange, by weaponizing the system of government against your political opponents and burying that information.
Trump should pardon him and get him out of jail.
I think that's more plausible. I think that information should be put out for the American public to see. Wait a second. Why don't we know who hacked the I think the FBI knows. We just haven't been told.
So do you think they would pardon Assange?
But if Trump pardons Assange, right? There could be secret meetings, grand jury hearings where he could kind of testify. It wouldn't go public. Where he could say, "These are my sources. This is the case."
There's a whole host of ways to do that.
The argument is that Assange said never under any circumstances.
And I'm saying he doesn't even have to. I'm saying the corrupt government gangsters that rigged Russiagate are the same ones that authored this. Right. Corruption, and they know how to hide it, so they went and prosecuted Assange. So the information already exists. You just got to go get it. Like, I know where to get it.
I just need to issue a correction. I made a mistake. It's not Bill Barr that was talking about assassinating Assange. It was Trump's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, that plotted to assassinate Assange. So I apologize for my mistake earlier.
Yeah, look,
you're going to get sued.
Yes. And then is Pompeo going to come back in the administration?
For the president is his personnel choices, firing, and then criminal prosecutions. Because here at the Libertarian Party convention, there's two big things. I hear, and it's Trump hired bad people. I don't trust him, and Trump it's hiring bad people and giving them control, like Fauci's included in this.
Oh yeah,
everything Fauci was involved with lying, and then the criminal prosecutions of said abject corruption. Right. So, for me, I agree. I mean, I look at economic policy, and I get it. The deficit stuff is bad. But economically, this country was a churning, and so you can't compare that to today. Trump made mistakes. I'm fine. I think overall it was a net positive. Foreign policy, I think, was tremendous. I think his foreign policy was the best I've seen in my life. I'm 38. Maybe there's people who are older than me who saw it better. That's fine. Crossing the DMZ into North Korea, into enemy territory, I nearly cried to see him make that move. No security detail. Crossing right into an enemy country. That's bravery. I respect it. The Abraham Accords, I think they're fantastic.
Ending the wars,
setting a timeline for withdrawal, trying to get us out of Syria. All of these things are massive net positives.
Pompeo will be back. Remember the Hall of Heroes planned.
But when I talk to libertarians, they say he's hiring bad people who stabbed him in the back. He doesn't know how to handle this. Bolton stabbed him in the back. My hope is that he's learned from that and that his revenge and our retribution will come with proper personnel. Because now he needs that good, like you said with Pence, he needs a better right-hand man. He needs a real right-hand man and good lieutenants who are going to make sure the job gets done.
So 2 things. So, selfish plug. In the back of this book, there's literally a glossary of government gangsters.
Yeshua's Lord.
That I put. The Biden administration spent 10 months blocking the
thinking that Vivek's going to be in charge 2028 too.
I name everybody, Democrat, Republican, and how they screwed us in the Trump administration.
That 8-year time frame.
So identifying them is step 1.
Would be a good decade,
people
wouldn't
always
it?
ask, okay, do we have the bench to come in with the president should he win next time around? My answer is 100% yes. We figured it out from the last time who not to trust and who to trust. And most importantly, that you don't need the volume of people in there that the government says you need to run the government.
Do you have a website for the book or anything like that?
Yeah, governmentgangsters.com, or you can get it on Amazon and all that other stuff too.
All right, we are going to now shift over to our conversation with the man himself, President Donald Trump, to ask him some of these questions personally. So make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends if you like it, and become a member at timcast.com. Click join us, support our work. If you like the work that we do, you want to see more of it, please join us. Get in the Discord server, hang out with like-minded individuals. You can follow me at Timcast on X and Instagram. Kash, do you want to shout out anything else before we shift over to Trump's conversation?
Oh, this is awesome. I can't wait to see you and the boss jab and jive a little. It's going to be fun. Thanks for having me here in Washington. And the movie release in June, War Room Studios releasing Government Gangsters, the film. We're going to do a whole bunch of previews, and I'd love to come back on the show and talk about it. But thanks.
Absolutely, anytime.
Yeah, Kash, thank you so much for coming on. I really want a book, so thank you. Appreciate it very much. If you could sign it, that would be amazing. If you want to support me, you can on lukeunfiltered.com. We're doing nature hikes. We're touching grass. We're getting people outside, meeting each other, building the culture. lukeunfiltered.com. See me there. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out, Kash. It was good to talk to you. I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can catch us this summer on the Destroy All Enemies tour with Megadeth and Mudvayne. Our new single is called Divine. It's available on Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and Doozer. Yeah, I think that's everything. So yeah, don't forget the Left Lanes for Crime. Hannah Claire.
We got to get the New England viewership up, Phil. That's our job.
We do.
I'm Hannah Claire Brimmel. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. That's Scare News. I'm really grateful to be a part of that team. They're at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. I'm HannahClaire.B on Instagram. I'm Hannah Claire B on Twitter. Thanks so much for this conversation. Hi, President Trump.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Donald J. Trump. Yeah, you complimented.
Looks like a thin man. He's lost some weight or something.
Thanks for sitting down. I really do appreciate it. So I know you don't have a lot of time, so I'll just we'll jump right in.
Okay, good.
We had a couple polls we went over on our show IRL. Young people, surprisingly, immigration is a top issue for them now. I was talking to a young guy. He's 26. He says he's watching what's going on in New York. He owns a business. He can't afford to buy his own house. He struggles to be able to support a family. And I know that you've said that there's going to be the largest deportation effort in your next term. How do we do it?
So millions and millions of people are coming into a country, and it's not necessarily exactly what we want or had in mind. They have open borders where people just flow in. And many of those people are coming from prisons. Many of those people, frankly, are murderers and they're drug dealers, and they're coming from mental institutions, and they're coming from places that are not going to work very well. It's not going to be very good for our country. So we're going to start with that, and we have to get them out. No country can sustain what we're going through. I believe the number is 15, 16 million, could even be 17 million people right now.
Is
that's more than almost, that's bigger than almost all of our states.
I think it's freaking out young people. How do we do it, though? I mean, is it going to be new personnel?
It will really be done with local police. You know, the respect has been taken away. The honor has been taken away from our police forces. They're not allowed to do anything. And whether it's libertarian or not libertarian, people have to have law and order. You can't have 500 people walking into a department store and just walking out with everything they have. And we have to give honor and respect back. And I believe immunity, because, you know, so often when a police person does their job, they end up with no pension, they end up with no house, they end up with no family. Everything's taken away from them. They have to get their own lawyer. So we're going to give them back their dignity and their strength. The local police know the criminals that we're talking about. They know their first name, their middle name, and their last name. They know everything about them. And we're going to have to let them do that, and they will bring them in. We have no choice. And these are, in many cases, and this is from all over the world, not just South America, which is big enough, but they're coming in from the Congo. They're coming in from all parts of Africa. They're coming in from all parts of Asia. And it's an invasion into our country, and no country can handle this.
Yeah.
So we're going to have them taken out. Local police, we're going to work very closely with the local police, and it's been done before. We had
I'm not sure how this is going to work.
Believe it or not, did the biggest deportation.
There are over 7 million people.
Pretty much stopped it. Strange that we mentioned Eisenhower, because you don't think of him that way, but he did a massive deportation where people were pouring in.
The next big question that we get a lot is there's two components to this. The first is many of the libertarians here, we want to see firings. We want to see in the bureaucracy corrupt individuals, the bloat. On top of that, without getting into the specifics for obvious reasons, the things that they're doing to you with the court system is not just to you. It is to me. It is to everyone who voted for you in 2020.
It's true.
Are we going to get some good personnel in as Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, and in the CIA, and see some prosecutions?
So we had some great people, because our trade numbers were fantastic. The jobs we did on trade, the jobs we did, frankly, in the military underneath the terrible television generals who were absolutely terrible, but we have incredible people. We defeated ISIS, and we had no new wars because they were concerned with us. I had no wars at all. I finished off a war that we were in for 20 years, but we had no wars. And we have to get the right people. It's all about the people. So when I first came here, I was only in Washington 17 times in my life. All of a sudden, I'm president. And I really knew nobody. I relied on people. Some were good, some were rhinos, some gave us some bad advice. And generally speaking, we had very good people. But we had some that we have to do better. Attorney General, we have to get a great Attorney General. And I'd work with the Libertarian Party on that. I think it's very good because, I view the Libertarian Party as almost a party of common sense, largely of common sense. And I say that about the Republican Party, too. We're a party of common sense. You want borders, but you want fairness. You want a lot of things that a lot of other people don't talk about. So we will work with a lot of people to get the right people in. The difference is I now know sort of everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm not having to be relying on people that I didn't know very well and listen to their recommendations. And I think we're going to have phenomenal people. I know the people. I know the good ones, the bad ones, the weak ones, the strong ones. I think we're going to have great people.
We're friends with Kash Patel. He was on the show just before you.
Okay, this is like time for the Nikki Haley question.
Confidence.
Yeah, Kash is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's an example of a good one.
Yep.
We have some great people, but Kash was a great example. Devin Nunes, as you know, he's fantastic.
Absolutely.
We have so many great people.
So when it came to foreign policy, I'll be honest, I didn't vote for you in 2016. I was jaded. Obama let me down. I'm from Chicago. I thought 2016 was silly. And then in 2020, with the timeline for getting out of Afghanistan,
right,
when you tried to get our troops out of Syria, my question is, why are we in Syria? Who even knew?
Yeah.
And they lied to you, and they lied to us about the number of troops in there. And so maybe it's a bit blunt for me to say I want to see people prosecuted for the lies of the American people. But in terms of foreign policy, perhaps it's a little bit of a biased interview, but I think you're the greatest president of my lifetime.
I appreciate it.
And ending the wars that we should not have been involved in. Now the fear is World War III.
Yeah.
What are you looking at when you enter your next term to stopping the escalation?
Well, first of all, I'm the only one that is going to stop World War III because this man can't put two sentences together. He doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't know where he is. And amazingly, it seems like he's going to be running. It's a lot of people say, do you think he'll make it to the starting gate? Well, we'll see what happens. But if you look at Viktor Orban, because we don't want to see wars. I don't want to see wars. I was in no wars other than we finished a war with ISIS and we completed it.
We'll see what Trump's stance is.
But I don't want to see wars. I think it's so horrible, so unnecessary, so costly in terms of lives and money in that order. And destroying these countries, you're destroying culture. When you look at Ukraine, that would have never happened if I were president. You look at the October 7th attack on Israel, it would have never happened.
I look at your policies, I see secure the borders, bring jobs back. I look at the Democrats and many Republicans, and it's foreign war and foreign expansion.
That's right.
What is that?
I think it's just a failed mentality. It's crazy. You can solve problems over a telephone. Instead, they start dropping bombs. I see recently they're dropping bombs all over Yemen. You don't have to do that. You can talk in such a way where they respect you and they listen to you. Viktor Orban of Hungary, the leader, they call him a strong man. Who cares if he's a strong man or not a strong man?
Diplomacy.
He's a very powerful guy. He said the problem the world has is that Donald Trump is no longer president. When he was president, China didn't play around, Russia didn't play around, nobody played around. And we had no problems. Today, the whole world is on fire.
I heard that funny, there's a conversation from a phone call where you said that there was they maybe thought there was a 5% chance you'd nuke them.
That's
And so it kept them in line. It's kind of scary to think about, but you take a look at the weakness we have now with Ukraine and the money that we are wasting. I'll bring it back to the economy. This young guy I was talking to about immigration. Actually, I'll put it this way. There's a viral video where a young man's screaming that we're sending hundreds of billions to a country no one's ever heard of. Right. And young people are hurting in this country. Do you see any direct economic policy that is on your list for 2025?
Direct economic, but also direct in terms of warfare. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars all around the world. But when you look at Ukraine, we're giving all of this money. Europe, which is much more affected by that war than us, is spending just a tiny fraction of what we're spending. And you say, does anybody at least get involved in this? But more importantly, I will end that war. I'll get it ended. Putin respects me. Zelensky respects me. I know all the players, and I want to get that war ended. It's a horrible war. It's a terrible. There's no good war, but that's a horrible war. And to think it would have never started. It would have never started if the election turned out like it should have turned out. That war would have never started. I mean, and the number of lives we're talking about is far greater than.
Oh wow! I haven't even thought about that way.
When they blow up a town, or when
tens of thousands of lives all lost because of these decisions. Potentially, in the United States.
Big, powerful buildings.
Think about it.
They come tumbling down to the ground, and they say nobody was injured. A lot of people were killed. Yeah. And
reality is permanently changed for
you will see that. You will see
generations.
that happening when those numbers really get announced. You're going to see it's much worse than people think.
Here at the Libertarian Party National Convention, they had one of their, I believe one of their presidential nominees said he wants to see Fauci, the heads of Moderna, Pfizer, Biden, and you locked up for what happened during COVID. I don't agree with them, but there is a big sentiment. Elon Musk tweeted, prosecute Fauci. Fauci lied to Congress about the gain-of-function research that was going on, and now we have testimony.
Well, I'm the one that stopped the funding, and this was funding from before me. I'm the one that stopped the funding. Fauci wasn't a big player in my administration like he was after I left. I mean, Biden made him the king of everything, and if you take a look at that, Fauci was not the big player with me that he was. And in fact, I did things that he didn't want to do. He wanted to keep it open to China. I said, you got to close it to China because it was all coming out of China. It was coming out of Wuhan, which I said right at the beginning. But the other thing is, and what people don't realize, I believe in federalism. I gave the power to governors. Some governors did a great job. In all cases, they were Republicans. And some, like in South Carolina, Henry McMaster, kept everything open. Others didn't. The Democrats did a bad job, very bad job. But basically, I gave that power over the states. I gave it to the governor. I gave it back to the states. And I think it's something which, when people realize that, it's something that they respect.
Will there be accountability for the lying to Congress when you get to appoint your new AG, deputy AG?
Yeah, and we'll take a look at statute of limitations because, the statute of limitations are quite long. And we're going to be looking at that very seriously, yeah.
I got one big question for you. So part of my family comes from Korea.
Good.
And you did what I think is one of the most tremendous things. You crossed the demilitarized zone into North Korea with no security as a sign of goodwill and peace with the hostile nation. And I've had people tell me it never happened. So I think people need to know about it. I'm wondering if you can just tell me how did that happen? How did it come to be?
And it hasn't happened since.
Yeah.
And when I met with, with the handoff, you sort of meet with the previous president for a period of time. The meeting lasted for quite a while. With President Obama, you sit in the Oval Office and you talk, and the press is outside, and you talk for a little while. He said the single greatest threat we have is North Korea. And I said, have you called them? Have you tried to talk to them? Little things like that. And it didn't matter what the answer was. He felt that was the single biggest.
He doesn't want to throw Obama under the bus.
Was North Korea. And as you know, there was certain hostility when I first started, and all of a sudden it boiled down to something that was very beautiful, the way it happened. And I got along with him very well. And I will say that if Hillary won that race, you would have had a nuclear war and millions of people would have been killed. And you weren't even close to that. It never happened. It was never going to happen. I got along great with him, and it just never was going to happen.
Were you at all scared in any way when you crossed into an enemy country?
Well, I wouldn't say that Secret Service was thrilled. And in those blue buildings, there were lots of people in those buildings that I looked at. The two blue buildings on each side with the windows. And I looked in those windows, and there were a lot of things happening in those. Someday I'll tell you about it. But no, I felt very safe. I felt my relationship with him.
That's going to fall into the lore. What was happening in the two buildings?
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden it morphed. He respected me. I respected him. And we ended up, once we got to know each other, we ended up very good. A very smart guy, very strong guy. He's the absolute leader of that country. For those that think he's not, they're wrong. And I got to know him very well. I even did a press conference. He never did a press conference before. I said, would you like to do a press conference? And we did a press conference, if you remember. And then he said, that's the end of the press conference. And boom, everybody was pretty radically thrown out. But it was a press conference, the only press conference he's ever done. I got along with him great. We had no nuclear war. You would have had a nuclear war guaranteed. And you won't, if we have the right president, if we have somebody that knows what he's doing, you're not going to have World War III. If, on the other hand, we don't, you're going to end up in World War III, and it's going to be a war like no other because of the power of weaponry.
Many have actually been saying we're already in it. The Hill published a piece saying we are in World War III and Biden is losing it. And so my hope is, I don't see any logical path for a Biden presidency to fix the economy, to fix anything.
He can't fix any, he can't fix himself.
Yeah.
Can't fix anything.
He had a new one the other day, Pack-a-lack-a-lack. I don't know if you saw that. He was muttering on TV, something like that. Now, crypto.
You know, by the way, I just so you know, I know all the leaders. They're at the top of their game. They're sharp. They're tough. They're smart. They love their country, or they do whatever they have to for their country at a minimum. And when they see this guy come in, I think they can't believe it. I know they can't believe it. It's not the right person.
So we'll do a couple quick ones. We don't have much time. You announced you're taking cryptocurrency.
What we're doing is we're backing it as a form of.
Why would Timcast not have time to interview Trump?
Because otherwise somebody else is going to be doing it from another country. And as you know, they're already trying. And it's going to happen, and we're going to help it happen. And it's something that can be very good. I think it can be very good.
No central bank digital currencies.
No central bank.
And one more big one. Will you pardon Julian Assange?
Well, I'm going to talk about that today, and we're going to give it very serious consideration. And we're going to have a couple of other things to say in the speech that I think you're going to love.
I've heard some rumors.
And you've gotten so much out of me, I should leave a little bit for the speech, don't you think?
Mr. President, it is an honor and a privilege. I really do appreciate you sitting down with me.
And you're very respected, I have to say. When I did a little research, and some of my guys said, and I've met you before, but they said just a very respected guy. It's my honor. Even though we're keeping that big crowd, that's the biggest crowd they've ever had. We're keeping them waiting just for this interview.
Considering the standpoint, this is 45-47.
Shall we?
CIC Trump.
Appreciate it very much.
It's a very special compliment.
That was fun. You got my vote. We better win. We're not going to have a country.
Yeah.
He says we better win, or we're not going to have a country.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do.
That looks to be the end of the stream.
Thanks for hanging out. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com, click join us, and become a member to support our work directly. As a member, you get access to our uncensored call-in show Monday through Thursday. You keep this show up and running because this show is made possible thanks in part to viewers like you. You get into our Discord server. You can follow me personally at Timcast on X and Instagram. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Well, thank you guys for you in the stream with me. We got to react to a rather important interview. If there are any other live streams I have planned, I may give some notifications rather than just stream impromptu. Take care. Have a good rest of your Memorial Day. Peace.